So this practice of looking at feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feeling, is a really important part of the foundations of mindfulness, and it's not something that we often focus on very much. It's important because it's really simple. Everything, every mental or physical experience can be categorized by pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So complexity then reduces to simplicity, and that's hugely helpful because we get completely overwhelmed with complexity. Okay? So this is an important thing to know about, to practice with, and it's important for many reasons. It's important because it helps us return to ease when we're feeling overwhelmed. And it helps us, give us supports for being able to deal with things that are challenging. So when we have something that's painful, physically or mentally painful, we can touch it and then suffuse ourselves with something that is pleasant, and that gives us more capacity to be with the unpleasant thing. So rather than seeing it as a solid block of difficult, we can move in and out of touching it and then getting ourselves resourced and nourished by something that's pleasant, go backing in and touching it. But the other reason why understanding Vedana is so important is that Vedana is underneath our beliefs. Pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral is what conditions our beliefs. And when we understand our beliefs as beliefs, and we understand what our limiting beliefs are, then that can help us begin to navigate our world when we are operating from limiting beliefs and when we are not. So I want to take a moment, go back into the story that we told last week, and then open it up for conversation here that I'm inviting Renee to scribe for. So last Wednesday's class, when we talked about Mara, I know you, Mara, I spoke about desire and how, well, actually it was with the Asubha practices. I was talking about how Asubha practices, looking at the unbeautiful nature of the body, is a classical practice that we do as a way of having perspective around sexual desire. And I mentioned that for me, because my sexual desire is rarely connected with visual, then I can take apart bodies until the cows come home, and it doesn't have an impact on sexual desire because I'm connected to emotion. So for me, sexual desire arises around feelings of emotional intimacy rather than on physical beauty. Okay? So then if we go to the third experience of the host of Mara, the third experience of the host of Mara was, who do you think you are to become fully enlightened? Okay? That was Mara's challenge to the Buddha under the Bodhi tree. Now, my guess, just as a guess, for most of us when we wake up in the morning, that's not our primary doubt. Is who do we think we are to become fully enlightened today? That's not our doubt. And so then the question is, what is the way our doubt shows up? Okay? How does it show up? What does it look like? What are the things that limit us, that has us feeling like, no, we can't, that's so another planet, I can't even think about that. So what is it that we are thinking about? Okay? So that's the invitation, is just to share what are the things. Like, I know sometimes the feeling for me is that it's not safe, or I don't have the right to exist, or that I'm basically bad. Any of these familiar? Mm-hmm. Okay, so what I'd like is for us to share what those things look like, and we can just write them down, and then I'll talk about them after lunch in terms of weaving limiting beliefs and the second and third foundation together and how to practice with it. So this now is just an opportunity for everyone to share. When we're feeling separate, when we're feeling stuck, when we're feeling like we're not connected to the luminous, clear, loving awareness that's our essence. When we're not in that, what are we believing, thinking about who and what we are? Yes, please come.
Unworthiness.
Unworthiness.
Brokenness.
Brokenness. Judy,
The body is not safe.
the body is not safe. I gave you 3.
I wrote down 2. Here,
No right to exist, essentially bad.
what was the third one?
The body's not safe.
Oh, I got that one. Okay.
That's good, okay. And anyone else?
I don't know if I'm following this, but mine is lack of motivation.
Not interested,
Yeah.
okay. No energy.
Is it lazy? I mean, what's the
No,
shame
it's
story?
unmotivation.
Unmotivated.
It's not motivated.
I'm not motivated, I don't care. I
I
don't want.
care, but I'm not motivated.
I'm not interested.
Well, what's wrong with the word motivated?
That's fine.
That's really what it is.
Because what I'm looking at is a belief. What is the belief?
Could be the belief that
Okay.
there's no motivation.
Yeah.
The belief is that I should be motivated.
So what's happening right now is not okay. That's that you should.
Yeah.
Be, yeah.
That it's, yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that's what,
Yeah. Yes.
I don't have enough time.
Go ahead.
I'm not trying hard enough or working hard enough.
Michael.
Something more in the line of I don't know how to trust my own judgment about what I need. I'm not sure how to say that. Undeveloped self-expressions.
Anyone else? Yes.
I have too much work to do first.
Hmm.
No time for luminosity.
We have not enough time already. I wonder if there's like I'm not deserve. Is there an I'm not deserving in there as well?
Well, you just add the luminosity to not enough time.
Okay.
I'm not deserving should be in there. Yeah.
Yeah, you all, like, the strength of the practice is evident here, like, unlovable, broken, bad. I mean, these are the ones that come to me.
Unconfident, not confident.
So that's an experience. Is that a belief?
I don't believe in myself and
Okay.
my strength.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah. I don't like to say this one, but lack of appreciation for life.
Okay.
Because I think I should have appreciation. For my life, I'm talking about.
You can use another one if you want.
Yeah. It seemed like we were wrapping up. So.
Okay.
Feeling fraudulent.
Fraudulent?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What was the word?
Fraudulent.
Foster.
Anything that we haven't named that's arising for you about how does Mara show up for you? How does Mara show up for you? So Mara showed up for the Buddha saying, who do you think you are to become completely free of suffering? That was the doubt that Mara showed up for the Buddha on the eve of his enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. How does it show up for us?
The,
Why?
pa-
Go ahead, please.
the path itself won't protect me.
The path won't protect me. Okay. Gabrielle?
Why should you be happy when there's so many who suffer?
Why should you be happy when there's so many who are suffering? Yes.
I have to be able to explain why I want what I want. Like there has to be like social acceptance, or it has to be okay with other people that I want what I want.
So
I don't know how
other
to put-
people get to vote, something like
Well,
that.
I think other people are more important than what I think.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's
So other people's needs are more important than your own? Not quite.
or beliefs, or like if I make a big like when I made a decision to not be married anymore, hardest part with me, how could I explain that to anybody else?
Mm.
Like
And-
judgments, maybe.
Pardon me?
Judgments.
Judgment? Yeah, or it wasn't okay that that's what I wanted.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
Needing permission.
Seems like all of these are judging mind,
Yeah.
don't they?
Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome. So there is a way in which our ability to move from pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral then supports our beliefs, and our ability to see them as beliefs then is part of what helps us get underneath them. So the Buddha on the night of his awakening said to Mara, "I see you, Mara." And in that situation, he touched the earth and evoked the witness of the earth to his accumulated virtue over eons. So he didn't engage in battle, but he also didn't just do it by himself. He touched the earth. And in touching the earth gave witness, and in giving witness to his accumulated virtues, that's when that host of Mara was vanquished. And when that host of Mara was vanquished was when his mind opened up to what enlightenment was, to the experience of enlightenment. Now, I want to just mention that after the experience of awakening, after the enlightenment, the Buddha described himself as somebody who was happy, as filled with joy, that was his resting point. So this path, which is rewiring for joy, talks about a gradual path as well as this transcendent path of what happens when we release the obstacles that are keeping our joy from blossoming or taking root. And so after lunch, we have a break for lunch, and after lunch we'll weave together some of the ways in which the second foundation of working with pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral supports beliefs, and how limiting beliefs is part of what we need to see in order to recognize when we have obstacles to our joy. Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Now about that?
Yeah.
I want to make sure I understand that when the Buddha touches the earth as his statement of I am okay, he's basically, I'm trying to understand the message. Like, I've looked at all my lifetimes, all of my efforts, all of my attempts at awareness and all that, and they are valid and they are good, and I have achieved what I have achieved. Is that what it was?
Ordinarily, when we have a thought like, who do you think you are?
Yeah.
We either go into battle
Yeah.
of, shut up or get out of my face, or we go into battle either believing or disbelieving the thought. Okay? We have an opinion about the thought where we are engaged with it.
Yeah.
And what he did was change the channel and just touch the earth as witnessing his goodness, as saying, I'm not going to engage in battle with this thought. I'm not going to refute it. I'm not going to accept it. I just am going to lean back into my goodness that I know to be there. And I'm going to invite the earth to witness that. So rather than engage in battle around the thought, who do you think you are? I am going to affirm my goodness that I have been cultivating for eons. Changing the conversation. It's like a non sequitur. Somebody asks you, what time is it? And you say, it's blue. But what the non sequitur was to go back into his understanding of his own goodness. And so when we are confronted with our limiting beliefs, how many of us go back into our goodness as a response? It's not something that we normally do. What we do is we battle, we believe, we battle, we fight, we collapse, we disappear, but we don't relax back into our own goodness. Because we take the belief to be something that is who we are. We're not actually observing it as just a belief. It's an expression of reality that then we have to fight with. So that's the thing about witnessing, is that when we see a limiting belief as a belief and a limiting one at that, we don't have to engage in battle. But that takes a tremendous amount of ground to actually recognize a limiting belief as just that, rather than as an expression of who we are. And that's why we practice. Yes?
How do I know I have that basic goodness, unconditional goodness? How I mean, I can say I've done, I've worked hard and I've, done
So
this
this is something that initially we take on faith, and then we have more and more direct experience. So when you open up and relax into the natural luminous nature of the mind, it isn't only that you have basic goodness, everything has basic goodness as its essence. And when we touch that, we realize we're not the single exception in the universe, which is what our mind is usually doing. There might be goodness in everyone, except maybe I have nice plants. But everything else, not so much, So part of it is faith. Part of it is recognizing in the Buddhist philosophy that we are not coming from basic badness. We're coming from a luminous nature as our essence. And part of it is direct experience. But it's a really important question. How do we know that? Richard, you had a question?
Yeah, I was curious about his choice of the earth is my witness. I mean, what's I mean, it seems to be somehow metaphorical or something. Is there something the very fact that he exists, the sort of suchness of existence makes him worthy of enlightenment, or why did he? What's the sort of meaning behind the earth is my witness?
I'm guessing because I don't actually know what happened then and how much I don't know, but my guess is that, or at least the way I experience, the way that impacts me is that I have come from conditioning where I feel very strongly like I have to do it myself. Like I've got to figure it out, I've got to do it myself. And what that does is it changes the game. Rather than me having to do it, having to prove it, me having to show it, me having to demonstrate it, me having to articulate it, I'm just allowing the earth to witness and be the mirror of my own goodness for me. So part of it is the recognition of our interdependence, that anything that I do, both good or not good, there's going to be a residue and an imprint in it, and those things are not something that I can just fabricate. Does that make sense to you, Richard?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. The other way that makes sense to me is that our bodies are our expression of the earth. And so it's not about our head trying to figure this out. It's about a relaxation into a level of letting our bodies show us the way. Tom, you had a question?
Yeah, question / comment. it seems like there's a whole issue of self involved in this, that we're not really fully talking about here. You know, my understanding is that we have to, I mean, like the Buddha obviously did, move beyond self. And I don't know how much that was involved in his experience with Mara or not. It seems like you have to move away from self at some point. You know, concept of self. And
So
then there's one other one. There's the other thing that I've encountered in philosophy, which is this sense of the ground of being. And so when I hear about the Buddha touching the ground, I think he's touching the ground. He's getting solid about the ground of being, about being, which is no self also.
So this was on the eve of his enlightenment. This was just right before he had that opening where he then had a really deep and clear understanding of the nature of not self. It was right before that happened.
Okay.
Okay?
Oh.
So in the Buddhist teachings and the Buddhist practice, we use the conditioned world to rub so that we can experience the unconditioned. These two are constantly interwoven. They're constantly interwoven. But it's not easy to access the unconditioned. We need the conditioned to access, right? So body and earth, the ground of being, these are our portals for what's always there, but not always available.
Got it. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. Like our own goodness is always there, and it's usually not what we're paying attention to. Michael?
I want to get back to Richard's question because I think it's really important for my understanding. He's not asking the Earth's permission. The Earth is being his witness, and so it's like almost like it's a skillful means for him to deal with Mara by connecting that way and maybe getting off of that object of Mara. Is that a way of understanding it, or?
I think that's a good way, yeah. It's like, I'm not going to engage in battle with you because the earth has got plenty to share has information that's going to counter this doubt, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have a question?
Just a question about interpretation. In the Sutta, does the Mara is appearing in a personified form, and does the earth also appear in a personified form? I feel like that would be helpful to understand what this gesture means.
There's an image of Gaia as this flowing water coming through which is the personification of earth, the deity of the earth that shows up. So yes, there is.
Do they interact with Mara, or do they only interact with the Buddha?
That's a statue that I saw. I actually don't remember that it was referred to in the sutta, so I don't know. I don't know how that works. But what I know is that just that gesture was what vanquished Mara. And then after that was when the Buddha, his experience of awakening was the next result. Yeah. Yes?
A quick question. So that gesture, there's a term for it. What is that term?
Touching the earth.
No? In Pali, maybe? Is there a Sanskrit
There
Pali?
will be a Pali, and I don't know what it is. Do you know what it is? Does anyone?
Yeah.
I think I've heard it referred to as the earth touching mudra, but there's probably like a Pali word for that.
Right. Yeah, this is just...
I
There's
mean,
a
it's a
certain-
mudra.
There's a certain Buddha that's word that's used with that Buddha.
I can Google it. I'll keep you posted.
Yeah.
So for the purposes of practice, are you saying that underneath, so okay, there's noticing Vedana, right, as the practice, and that because it's noticing conditioning, that underneath that the unconditioned can arise? Like, are you actually pointing towards like the moment of freedom that is on the other side of Vedana that's more trustworthy and that we can feel into? Because sometimes in your teachings you're actually like kind of clearing some of the debris of shame and fear away. So I'm wondering if that's where you're headed, or I'm just hoping you're headed there.
Well, what I've been doing with these teachings is move between the classical teachings and limbic informed teachings, which have a span that involves trauma and attachment wounding and all kinds of stuff. And so when we're navigating attachment wounding, where like the lens through which we see things is a lens that doesn't have security as one of its options, then we've got some developmental work, which is not just spiritual practice, to learn how to trust, because we haven't had that experience of trusting people to know that they can be reliable. And so our views and our limiting beliefs are shaped by the experiences that we have. And so my own personal way of navigating this stuff is to work it from both ends. To work it from the developmental side, where I engage in repair of working with relationships that I can trust. And I also spend as much time as I can touching what either approximates or is unconditioned, to remind myself that that actually is my nature, not this stuff that feels broken or bad or wounded or unworthy, that those are the conditioned results of the things that set up those conditions, but that's not actually the whole story. That's the record playing, but that's not what happens when the record stops. And so these two ends of working the developmental side and working the transcendent, ever-present, non-dual side has been my path. And so what I like to do, whether I'm effective or not, is weave between these two to show when the practice of touching the transcendent is the most effective, and when we need to do the developmental work of hanging out with people who are trustworthy, so that we can begin to get a feeling of what it might be like to be with people that we can actually trust. That's a highly conditioned experience. It's not unconditioned. But that conditioned experience sets us up for being able to relax into the unconditioned, because otherwise what can happen, I've seen in myself, is the attachment wounding has in us a response mechanism, so that when we get to the place of letting go in the transcendent way, we come up against the fear of annihilation. The attachment wounding has us coming into a place of, I can't let go into that because I have no experience of trusting anything that's going to be able to hold me. And I absolutely can't trust that. That emptiness is not the emptiness of fullness, it's the emptiness of annihilation. And we can't go there. So when we've got attachment wounding, we come into spiritual circles thinking this is going to be the answer. And we keep coming up against this wall and thinking, well, maybe if I just try harder, if I just do more, if I just do it harder, if I just practice more, then I'll have a different result. And what we're realizing is that we've got two different things going on, and they're not speaking to each other because they're at different levels. We're trying to use the transcendent in order to heal the conditioned. It don't work so good.
Good one.
Yes.
I was going to talk about the touching the earth thing, and it kind of goes with what you're saying, and that is that as we were doing the breathing practice earlier,
Could you speak up?
as we were doing the breathing practice earlier, I noticed that it felt like being on a swing, that as you inhale, and then at the top of the inhale there's this moment of being suspended, and then exhale, and then there's that suspended moment. And then I noticed that this was very joyful. And then I noticed that it was also freedom, and the reason that it felt like freedom, because I began to wonder so what makes it feel free, that it's just my breath, is that I'm taken care of, that the breath is just there, the oxygen is just there, and everything that I need is provided, and I really don't need to do anything, and I'm taken care of. And so the freedom comes from knowing that I am taken care of. My next breath is always there waiting for me. And maybe touching the earth is a symbol of having everything you need. The earth is here providing everything that we could possibly need, sustaining us, and from that sustenance you can be free. If you couldn't be free, you wouldn't have everything taken care of.
So I think, these metaphors and these stories are rich, and I don't think that there's a one right way. And I think what's happening is that it's landing in each of us in a way that's alive, and that there are each right ways of understanding and helping us have more connection, both with the story as well as what are the bridge places in our own practice. Like, how do we use this effectively so that we have more capacity in our practice? Where do we need to lighten up? Where do we need to lean in? And that's my hope, is that by cultivating in this way, having conversations like this, we have more information about when we can lighten up and when we can lean in. All right? So let's pause here and have lunch. And are we okay with a 50-minute lunch break?
Yeah.
15 or 50?
15 is not okay.
Can I say something about this? About lunch?
Yeah.
Yes.
This is logistical.